Hi, Michael. Welcome to the School of Innovation. How are you today?
Doing really well. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure for us to having you. And just let me give our listeners just a quick summary of Michael. He has a PhD in biomedical engineering. He's an entrepreneur, startup advisor, and he's currently the director of healthcare and life science at Harvard Innovation Labs. And Michael, taking in consideration your long and extensive and impressive journey, could you tell us how this reflected on how these different roles form or shape what you do today?
I'm currently director of healthcare and life sciences at Harvard Innovation Labs. So, kind of what is that, right? So, well, I help support all of the founders and entrepreneurs coming out of Harvard that are working on, various life science startups. So, I mean, anything and everything from cell and gene therapy, medical devices, all the way through to anything digital health that you could possibly think of, right? So it's very broad. These are usually early stage founders I'm helping support with early stage ventures from, kind of idea concept phase all the way through to, well, maybe they've raised some significant funding from a venture investor, seed or Series A even type funding. So it's very broad. So, I mean, how I, kind of got to this position was I originally, like you said, I have a PhD in biomedical engineering. And I became a faculty member, assistant professor of biomedical engineering shortly after my PhD. And I had started my lab, and I was building out a lab, and I had a mentor, Professor Larry Hench, who was very influential on me and had a great success and track record of commercializing his own technology and translating his own science to real products that actually impacted patients, right? And that was, kind of what became one of my goals and interests. And so after becoming a faculty, and having my own lab and having my own PhD students and postdocs, I became really most interested in instead of just publishing papers and such, which is great. But I really became interested in being able to translate the technologies that I was working on through startups, right? Which is a little unusual compared to maybe the traditional academic, but that's really where my interests lie, or at the time late, and I began building out a company with a group that was working out of my lab, and I helped them build this company, this diagnostic platform, and they ended up being very successful and moving out to San Francisco and getting into Y Combinator and raising a bunch of money from some venture investors. They got a CLIA certification and actually exited from the company a couple months ago. Luminous Labs. And it was really cool to see this, right? And that's what really got me on the path of entrepreneurship and shifted my interest more and more towards how can we translate cutting edge technologies more efficiently out of the lab towards commercialization, right? And how really can we better align incentives of one another, that is those in academia and those in industry and venture. And so that's, that was kind of my growing interest. And I came across this role at Harvard Innovation Labs after having then worked on several other startups out of my research lab, and said, I think this would be a great opportunity for me to move up to Boston, to Cambridge. I was in Florida at the time, and really pursue my passion and my dreams to really be involved in just building awesome startups based on cutting edge technology and science.
Do you have any standard methodology that you use for identifying which are the best ideas, support them, and they'll scale the student-led ventures?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, it's hard to template a process like building a life science company because it's so complex, right? So is there a template? Not necessarily. Are there things that can be systematized? I think so. I'm an engineer, right? So I like to create processes, right? Repeatable processes if possible. And so how can we do that, right? And so science is really hard. It's very complex. And people are even more complex, right? You got to have science, and you got to have people. People are the most important things when it comes to building any successful project or venture or startup or company, whatever it is. People are the most important. So starting with the people, right? We want to start with the people, really understand, are these the right people to be doing this job, right? And if they are, do they have the right people around them? And if not, can we get the right people around them? And that's a big part of my job is really helping to play the role of connector, and using my network and the network that we have at Harvard Innovation Labs to be able to connect the right people to help these founders as they want to grow and expand their business, right? Whether that's commercial and business development help, or whether it's investors, or whether it's the right IP attorney, or whether that's someone that's a technical expert in an area that complements their own. Those are the kinds of people. So people is kind of number one, right? And then really it's let's look at what is it that you're working on, right? Are you really focused on the science, and do you understand the problem are you trying to solve a problem that has an unmet need that's significant, right? So I mean, this is kind of the first thing that I really focus on is, do you have an unmet need? Do you really understand it? Can you stratify really well the let's say patient population, or whoever the customer end user population may be, right? In therapeutics, often we're talking about patient population. Do you really understand what those unmet needs? And then, all right, if it solves that problem, will then also these people who need to be the end users, will they actually adopt this technology or this product or this solution that you're developing? So unmet need and adoption, right? Identifying both and being able to figure out how to get these people to adopt whatever it is, and pay to adopt, right? Pay over what their existing solutions currently are, right? And then the other parts that typically, right, look at is commercialization viability, right? So how viable is the commercialization plan, and is there a viable commercialization plan? And then finally, the intellectual property, right? I mean, really important. Most of these companies are life science companies, a lot of biotech companies, medical devices, diagnostic companies, where intellectual property is absolutely, foundational to building a successful company. So you got to have IP, you got to have an intellectual property plan. If you have patents, or provisional patents, do you need to file other patents? Do you need to license other, some of your technology? What is that? So those are kind of some of the things. And then finally, I'd say capital, right? Being able to find some money to actually go execute. But before the capital ever, the money ever becomes even a thought, it's figuring out the people, it's figuring out the why and the what, right? The unmet need and the technology itself. Those I think are really the way that we kind of approach this process.
So I would like just to have two more questions about the high labs. First of all, I don't want to make this like a competitions, but there's a lot of other universities, that have a spin-off programs or helping other companies, right? Like MIT or Stanford. Could you please share with us let's say, the competitive advantage or the differences that Harvard High Labs have between them, and also that you've been talking about, the relationship with investors. Could you share a little bit how is the how do you work this relationship between them to secure the funds for each venture that you have?
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know that there's any competition of any kind. I mean, we're only serving the Harvard ecosystem, right? We're there to serve Harvard students, Harvard researchers, Harvard postdocs, Harvard faculty, and Harvard alumni. So there's not. We have our market, and we know what our market is, and we're very good at our market, right? It's kind of a captive audience in this way. So I don't know, right? And I don't know enough about some of these other programs to really say that they're fantastic programs. Stanford has several fantastic programs. I know Columbia has a great program. Many other schools. MIT has several fantastic programs, right? And some really great people over there. Within the Boston area, BU and BNOBU and Tufts also have some great programs, right? And I love working with all this. I think that's actually what makes our ecosystem, our community at Harvard so strong, is the broader ecosystem in the community in the Boston and Cambridge area. And I think, as they say, rising tide raises all boats, or as they say, right? And I think that's what's important. I think that we all contribute to that ecosystem, and we all try to build the best possible ecosystem for innovation and for biotech and life science as we possibly can. And I think that's what's most important. So we try to be a big contributor. We know who the people are that we can help. One of the things that we do, is that we don't take equity, right? Ownership in these companies. We don't have any equity interest. We don't take ownership of the IP. Harvard may own the IP, and we can help these companies figure out the strategy that they need to figure out in terms of if they need to go license the IP or get an option or whatever it might be that they need to do. We're there to help support them, right? We're there to help guide them on that journey, the part of that process, and that's great. That's good for Harvard, and that's great for the company to be able to do that. We do have different means of providing capital to these companies, small early stage pre-seed capital. We have a small venture fund through which we can provide some money to these founders, $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 to kind of get them started. But we also have a great space. I think that's the other thing is we have a fantastic space. We've got, a nice big 35,000 square feet or so kind of co-working office style space, but we've also got a really great wet lab space, about 15,000 square feet of wet lab space that we run in partnership with Lab Central, which is kind of the world premier incubator for life science companies based in Kendall Square. And so we're very fortunate to have them as part of our team, and the partnership we have with them. They just make for a fantastic community in our wet lab facilities, and really I think are the key to success that we've had with our life science companies that need those types of wet lab facilities. So I think there's a couple different pieces, but in reality the most important thing, to be honest, I think is the network of people. It always goes back to the people. I think our best resource by far and away is the network of people, the advisors, the mentors, the EIRs, the alumni, the faculty, the other entrepreneurs that we're working with, and then of course, as you mentioned, our investors that we work with, and all of our friends from the investment community. It's like anything else with the investors, and as you asked, about how to go about raising capital in these companies. You obviously need capital. They're early. They need to go out and build their technologies and build their teams and et cetera. And so it's just about building relationships, right? And I like to build very strong relationships with these investors or with whomever they might be that's going to interact with the team. And I try to maintain really strong relationships with our investment community, with folks from the biopharma and life science BD teams, and whomever it might be that's looking to partner with or potentially invest in these companies, so that I have kind of a stable of people who I can reach out to, who I trust and know, and that understand our mission at iLab, which is to help support these founders and these entrepreneurs as they are on kind of part of an educational mission, but also on the mission to build a company, so that they really understand our mission and what we're there to do. And then those are the types of people that we like to work for. It's always kind of a one-off instance in terms of building the relationship between these investors and making the right introductions to the right entrepreneurs and helping facilitate those. And once those relationships are made and those introductions are made, we allow the founders to take it from there. I, of course, am happy to assist them on any other part of that process, all the way up through closing that deal and bringing the financing on, and whatever they need advice on. That's what I'm there to help assist them with.
I would like to better understand how you take or how you design these top performing communities. Is there any, it's not a methodology, right? But how do you make the interactions with them? And also taking in consideration that, let's say, open innovation, it's so difficult to make the translation between academic research and commercial ventures. How do you personally bridge the gap to go from bench to bedside?
Yeah. So the first part of the question says two big questions there. So I think the first part of the question is, how do we work with the local innovation ecosystem? How do we contribute, right? So, I think it's the most important piece of all of this is that there's a strong innovation ecosystem, and our role in that innovation ecosystem and playing that role, as a supporting pillar of our ecosystem in Boston. So again, that comes back to also building relationships, knowing the right players, being able to, not just take from the system, but also give back, right? So I think that's a big part, is being, it being a mutually reciprocal relationship, understanding what other players' motivations are and what they need, being able to help them, right, whoever those other stakeholders are, and then also seeking help from those stakeholders when you need it. But again, ensuring that it's a reciprocal relationship, and then really understanding what drives the motivations of others. But in the end, I mean, we all want to help each other because the bigger and the better that system becomes, the better that ecosystem is for everyone involved, right? Um, the other part of your question was, how to overcome some of the challenges, I think, of translation, right, from academia to venture or to industry, which are two different things. But I mean, there's many challenges there, but I think Harvard has done a great job at really, trying to innovate in the area of technology translation and commercialization. And that's from, our Office of Technology and Development, also from Harvard Innovation Labs, from, the researchers themselves having, interest in translation of their technology to patients, right? I think that many researchers and faculty see that this is a way to have impact, right? From many young scientists, many of the PhD students, right? They see this already. Like this is a means to have impact, and building a startup is one possible route to do that. It's not the only. There's many others, right? You can go partner with an industry company. You can go work for an industry company on a technology that you're an expert in. Building a venture and seeking out venture investment to do so is definitely one route. It's one that we help support and promote. But it's really, again, it comes back to if we could have better alignment from those sides of the gap or the bridging the gap, right? On one side we have academia, on the other side we have industry, and how can we better bridge that? And again, if you understand each other's incentives, again, it's really comes down to people. What's the incentives of academia? What's the incentives of industry? Can we better align those? I think there's definitely commonalities. There's definitely things that are not aligned, right? But I think that we can figure out what those are, and we can come to a place where we can work together much more efficiently. I think reducing, the barriers, being more transparent, from an academic side, academia needs to be more transparent. There needs to be more systematic processes in place. There needs to be new, innovative types of partnerships and agreements that industry is willing to take. They also need to be, everybody needs to be understanding that everybody wants to gain something for their own particular reason. How can we better align to be able to provide, a win-win for both sides of the table? But I think the big piece is from an academic side, understanding what unmet need. What are the unmet needs of industry? What are the unmet needs of venture? If we can go out from academic side and we can really understand what those needs are, and we can help to begin to match those needs with the research that's being done with those researchers that are really interested and driven to translate technology, then I think we're going in the right direction. Right? I don't think all research needs to be done that way, but I do think for those that are interested in translation, starting with an understanding of a need and then building a solution around that using the right technologies and the right people is the better way to go than finding a solution, i.e. a technology, and then trying to fit it in to solve a particular problem that may not be so much of a problem that is wishing to be solved. So I mean that's I think is a big part, is really again understanding what the needs are and how they can be, the solutions can be better incentivized on both sides.
This is not a part of the futuristic, but taking in consideration COVID-19 that right now is like everybody's talking about it. I don't know how it's in Boston right now, but I would like to know. There's a lot of different new technologies that are coming from the last 5 years. I'm talking synthetic biology, AI. Which are the trends that you're seeing that are starting to arise?
Couple areas that you just mentioned that I'm really bullish about. Um, one being anything biomanufacturing, anything in the space of biomanufacturing, bioprocessing, especially at the convergence and interface of science and engineering, biology and engineering, let's say. I think that's a really exciting space. So manufacturing of cell products, manufacturing of gene products, manufacturing of biologicals, processing of cells and tissues, even further down the pipeline to regenerative medicine and true tissue engineering potentially, right? I think those are really exciting areas right now. I think the interface of data-driven technologies, AI, machine learning, at the interface of biomanufacturing, at cell and gene therapies, being able to drive those technologies forward with data. I think that right there is probably one of the most exciting spaces that's out there. Drug discovery and automation also kind of similar and in line with what I just said. I think drug discovery and automation also at the interface of data-driven technologies, whether that's AI, machine learning, other types of techniques. I think that's really an exciting space as well. I think we're talking about much higher efficiency, leading to much higher effective discovery rates and success rates of potential candidates as they move through the pipeline. I think those are a couple areas that are really quite exciting. I mean, cell therapies more broadly. I think cell therapies, we're really getting to see cell therapies come to light. I mean, I remember back when I was in college and even grad school, it was almost science fiction. And now we see cell therapies as kind of one of the leading modalities where you can really use a cell as a drug to regrow or regenerate tissues, or to modulate the immune system in some way. I think that's extremely exciting. I think the more we uncover about the immune system and immunology, I think is really also very exciting. Cardiometabolic diseases, obesity, NASH. I think there's a lot going on there with big unmet needs that need to be served. I think gene therapy can play a big role there. I think gene therapy broadly, I think designing and developing new ways of delivering gene therapy and gene editing as therapeutic modalities, non-viral vector types of technologies and platforms for delivering these types of gene therapy and gene editing technologies. I think it's very, very exciting. So yeah, I mean, those are some of the areas that I'm most excited about. There's many, many more. I think any interface with data, big data, AI, ML, when it comes to healthcare, digital healthcare. I think with the pandemic, what we've seen, the forced move to the use of telehealth by almost everyone, I think has been fantastic. I think that's something that's been a long time waiting, and I'm really happy that it's finally occurred. There's a lot of opportunity out there. There's a lot of unmet need. I think the markets currently show it. You see the IPO market is just popping off. You see that the venture market is still very strong in life sciences and biotech in particular. Digital health as well. There's been more money raised in the first half of the year than I think in the past several years for digital health. So a lot of opportunity out there, a lot of unmet needs to still be conquered and tackled, but there's also a lot of capital and a lot of innovation to be used.
So just before our wrap up, is there any way that our listeners can approach you, or which would be the best way if anybody has any questions or would like to know more about the iLabs?
The best way, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to get to me. I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm very active on there. Shoot me a message. I'm more than happy to chat. Reach out, connect with me. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. Again, I've met a lot of fantastic. I mean, I tell you, it's one of my favorite tools, LinkedIn. I've met. This is how we met, right, Adrian? This is how I've met some of the most interesting people I know. How I've had many of the opportunities that I've had is through the people I've met through LinkedIn.
Great. I'll add this information in the show notes. And Michael, it's been a pleasure having you in this show. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Adrian. I really appreciate you having me. This has been fun.